this video, we are going to be discussing about static members of a class. So, data members or member functions which have been defined with the help of with the help of the keyword static are called the static members of a class. So, they can be a static data member like so, or it can be a static member function like so. What happens when you define a variable, a data member, or a member function as static is that it becomes specific to a class. Mind my words, it becomes specific to a class. That is, its uniqueness only belongs to the class. All objects of that class will share the same static members. So, for example, for every instance of car that we create, be it car C1, C2, C3, etc., each of them will have unique data members and the functions will be unique as well. But all of them will share the same static members. So, what then happens is that the number of the data member over here, which is num of cars, becomes specific only to the car class. Every object that of car class that we create will be accessing the same number of cars, and it is not related to any particular object. What that means is, for example, over here we use the this pointer to access the particular data member of an object. We cannot do that in term when it comes to a static variable. Why? Again, because it is shared by all the objects of a class. It is not unique to every object. Let's see what I mean by that in the examples. So what I'm doing here is each time I'm creating an object, I'm increasing the static variable, which is num of cars, by 1, and each time the destructor is called, I'm decreasing it by 1. Whenever we declare a static variable, we also need to initialize it, and how you initialize it is using the scope resolution operator. So what we do is we write it again, which is the data type of the static variable, the class which it belongs to, the scope resolution operator, and the variable name itself equal to whatever value we want to uh, initialize it to. Similarly, what we can do is we can have a static member function wherein we can do whatever operations we can only on static variables. Remember that static member functions can only access other static variables. They cannot access data members. Why? Because again, a static member will be associated to the class, not to the object. So it cannot actually access the data members which are there in objects, which can be accessed only via an object. But every member function to that class can use both the static data member and the static member function. So let's just see how we use it. So I'm creating four instances of a car class, in which I'm first using the parameterized constructor, and then I'm using the default constructors to create different objects. And what I'm doing is each time I'm printing, or I'm running the function called get num of cars, which simply returns the static members as value at that instant. And how you call it is again using the class name, scope resolution operator, and which static member function do you want to call. So let's see how it works. 2 3 4. So again, uh you notice that we are not actually, unlike how we would have called any other member function, for example c1 dot get mileage, or get c1 dot get distance traveled. Here we are using c1 and a dot operator, which means that we are accessing the data member, sorry, the member function specific to this object. Here we are not doing that. Here we are only accessing the static member which belongs to a class. It does not belong to any particular object, and all the objects are all of them share the same values of the particular static data member. And how we notice that is because after creation of every object in their constructor, the static member is being increased. So what we can also do is see out uh, num of cars and L. So what we will be able to see is that similar to what we have already observed, that after the creation, we see that the static data member num of cars is being incremented as shown over here, 2, 3, and 4. So what happens at C1, it will go. It'll assign the particular name and ID parameters which we have passed onto that object's specific data members. It'll initialize the distance traveled to 0. This distance traveled will also be actually the distance traveled specific to that object, but num of cars will not be specific to that object. It belongs to the car. It's a static member. So it gets increased to 1. So what will happen is num of cars will become 1. Let's keep our count over here. So let's see, our num of cars was initially 0, which I have initialized over here. Then after I create C1, it becomes 1. What happens in C2 then is it calls the default parameter, default constructor, in which it gets incremented again to 2, and we uh, get the value of that static data member using the static function, which is being called using the class name, and hence we get the value 2. After creating 3, again this will get incremented to 3, and that's what is printed as well. Following which, after C4, it will again get incremented. Again, this function will return the current value of the static data member, which is 4, and that's what gets printed. So this was all about static data members and static member functions, which are the static members of a class. Thank you.